Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to Operation Shoestring's annual conversation about community. I'm Robert Langford, Shoestring's Executive Director. It's great to have you here. Thanks for making time in your day for our conversation, meeting the moment, rising together in turbulent times. And thanks for coming to what is actually part two of the conversation this year, which focuses on the power of youth voices. A decade and a half ago, the Shoestring family noticed that there were few places in our community where folks could come together from all walks of life and engage in an actual conversation about critical and often hot button issues relevant to the health and well-being of our larger community, and of course to Operation Shoestring. So we created this community forum to have honest talk in a safe space about those issues, in hopes that it would foster greater understanding of the issues and each other. In 2020, with all that's happening in our world, having a safe place for conversation about critical issues seems more important than ever. Special thanks first to our esteemed panelists and moderator for today's conversation. You will hear more about them shortly. Thanks also to our donors and volunteers who underwrite and support Operation Shoestring's work. For a list of people and organizations making our work possible, go to operationshoestring.org, our website. Thanks to our board and staff who labor steadfastly and passionately to ensure that we all rise together. A special shout out to Ayana Kennel, who's our executive producer, if you will, who made all this happen. And most important of all, thanks to the children, youth, families, and communities we serve. Your partnership and guidance in this work hold us accountable to do our work as well as possible. So here's our agenda for today, briefly. We're going to have a conversation as soon as I stop yammering, and it's going to focus on the power of youth voices. And we want to invite you, the viewing audience, to send us questions in the chat. And also to like and share us on Facebook. And at the end of the conversation, as we bump up towards the end of the hour, we want to have a little time for Q&A from you, the viewers. And again, to have us able to do that, send us some of your questions in the chat. And then we'll wrap up with a hard stop at 1 o'clock. First, though, a little bit about Operation Shoestring. Our work, high quality after school and summer programs, parent supports, youth development programs, and more, has always focused on services for children and families in low income neighborhoods. But Shoestring's work has also always been about something bigger. It's about fighting racism. It's about creating equity and opportunity. It's about bringing people together to support the people in our city and our communities who too often find themselves on the harder side of human difference. It's about building a community that ultimately benefits all of us equitably. Indeed, it's about all of us rising together. That's what we've always done, and that's what we'll continue to do. More than half a century ago, the civil rights movement of the 1960s created Operation Shoestring, and the movement's principles of equity and opportunity and justice continue to inform our work today. Now, though, with Black Lives Matter and the civil rights movement of today, how are young people affected by or shaping history? And what are young people teaching us, all of us? To guide us in this conversation, let me welcome Vondaris Gordon, a former Shoestring board member with a distinguished career in serving children, families, and communities like Operation Shoestrings. Vaughn is a student at the University of Mississippi, was on the founding board of the William Winter Institute for Racial Reconciliation, where today he serves as its youth engagement manager. And maybe most important of all and relevant for today, Vaughn's also a husband and a father to 3 young daughters. Thank you, Vaughn. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robert. It is always an honor and a pleasure for me to be with the young people, the amazing young people served by Operation Shoestring, but also the families. I would like to echo your thanks for those a long time and hopefully new supporters of Operation Shoestring and its really important work. 50 plus years of an amazing track record is something that I think every organization in our community should strive for. So thank you for the opportunity. I am really, really honored to be here. Um, for today's conversation, which I think Robert described perfectly, we have four really phenomenal young people whose charge today is really just to share their perspectives. I will ask a series of questions to give them to kind of warm them up. But based on how I've gotten to know them, they are the best and brightest of our community. They are young and they are energetic, smart and funny and fun, but they are also deeply moved by what is happening in our country, its impact on them personally and their peers. And so we want to give them an opportunity to share some of those thoughts with us, perhaps issue a challenge or two, but to talk about the ways that we, as a community, can listen to young voices, incorporate their perspectives into the actions that we take, and come out of it, as Operation Shoestring says, all rising together. Together, excuse me. So our panelist for today, first is Sasha Lewis. Sasha is a 16-year-old activist and cultural organizer that's been trained as a doula. Um, Sasha identifies as Afro Latina. She was born in the Mississippi Delta. Shout out to the Delta. I'm a Sunflower County boy myself. And she currently resides in Jackson. Sasha's passion is the arts. She practices a wide range of art forms, painting, script writing, and she's currently working to start a project with youth, children of immigrants, to help them learn to use the art as an expression of social justice. She's a Freedom Fellow with PAI. Sasha, I want to give you the opportunity in a moment to talk a little bit more about that if you choose. She took part in the Winter Institute's 2020 Summer Youth Institute program. She was a really integral part of the success of that program and the strength of her cohort. And she's currently interning with IAJE, the only immigrant organization for immigrants by immigrants in the state of Mississippi. They have been a godsend to many of the families and community members affected by the raids, but also other pressing needs in our community. So thank you, Sasha, for being with us. Also, we have Mariah Rowland. Mariah is ambitious and independent. She's a senior at Murrah High School, and the Power APAC Visual Arts Program. Uh, Communication and planning skills is what she's especially good at. And we are really grateful that she takes pride in being one of Jackson's best youth organizers. So thank you very much, Mariah, for being with us. Um, Third is Jacob McGrath. Jacob is a junior at St. Andrew's Episcopal School. He's a member of the school's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and that committee is dedicated to fostering an educative, as Jacob says, an inclusive environment for their students. As a Winter Institute Youth Engagement Manager, that is the Lord's work to me, Jacob. So thank you very much for being willing to join us. And finally, our final panelist is Benjamin Davis. Ben is a senior at Murrah High School as well. He's a member of the debate team. He's also an ambassador, which is a phenomenal program that Operation Shoestring stewards. And he likewise was a participant in the Summer Youth Institute program. So thank you all for being with us. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of briefly tell us a little bit about yourselves. So I address you properly. I'd like you to each tell us the name that you like to go by. But the most important bit of information I want you to share in the beginning is I want you to tell us who your favorite cartoon character or superhero is, I'd like you to tell us why. So we always model in my work what we're asking others to do. Vaughn, I'm more than happy with you calling me Vaughn throughout this conversation. My favorite cartoon character growing up were these crows, two crows named Heckle and Jekyll. They were mischievous. All I ever remember them doing was creating chaos in the cartoons. They were funny to me, and unfortunately, the cartoons with them in it are hard to find now. But Heckle and Jekyll were my two favorite. He-Man was I guess third in my mind. Mariah, would you mind going first?
Sure. So yes, it's fine to address me just as Mariah. And my favorite superhero would probably be Miles Morales. I really just I like his character a lot as essentially being not just defined as like being the Black Spider-Man, but also what he like represents for a lot of people growing up that need that type of representation on screen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mariah. Jacob, tell us about your favorite character.
You can just refer to me as Jacob, and my favorite cartoon character is Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And I just kind of like him because he was one of the first characters in animation to be more defined by his personality than as like a subject for gags. And also, he doesn't get enough screen time, in my opinion. They haven't really done enough with him, probably because he is almost 100 years old now.
Wow. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jacob. Ben. Here you go.
Audio is working right now.
Yep, we your audio is just fine. Your video's a little moving, but everybody's probably experienced that this week, if not today, so it's no big deal. Tell us about your favorite cartoon character or superhero. All right. We may have to come back to you, Ben. Sasha, are you ready? Would you mind sharing with us your character?
Yeah, I'm ready. I was going to say Miles Morales because I really identify with him, not only because of his personality, but because he's like me. He's Afro-Latina or Afro-Latino or whatever. But I guess as a second favorite, my favorite superhero would have to be Shuri, Black Panther's sister, because I just loved her character. She's so strong. She's so intelligent. The way she thinks, the way she's acts. She reminds me of my little sister because my little sister is really witty like that. You know, I love those two. And you can just call me Sasha.
Okay. Thank you. And she also had such amazing style, right? She had such amazing style. Before we jump um, into our conversation, I think it is only fitting that we take 15, 20 seconds to honor those people whose tragic um, losses, the tragic deaths, really unfortunate experiences have highlighted for our nation and for our community um, a lot of the hard work that we need to do. So I'd like us to take just a moment of silence in honor of those people, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others. Unfortunately, I want us to just take a moment to honor them and their sacrifice for justice and equity. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's get started with the questions. There have been a lot of difficult things happening in our country, and we are going to have a really rich conversation about those things. But I'd like to kind of create a foundation for us and an opportunity for us to connect not just with each other, but the people who are listening. I'd love to know what's good right now. Despite all the challenges we've experienced, the long spring break and and all of that we had, the pandemic, of course, what's good for you right now? Mariah, would you mind sharing a blessing, something that you've taken out of these this year, really, that you take heart in or you found pleasure in?
Sure. So, as of recently, my mom actually got a new job after unfortunately being unemployed thanks to the pandemic. And I've really just come to really admire her as an individual for not only staying strong in presence for me and also everybody else, but also just making light of such a difficult situation that she's currently been in. I think of my family really as being like my entire world. So I've really come to admire her and her strength when getting all of this through the pandemic, and especially helping me recently with school and applying for colleges.
Wow. Shout out to mom. Shout out to mom. Ben, what about you? What's good? What have you taken heart in the last year? Uh-oh. We'll give him a second to get that worked out. Jacob, would you mind sharing with us what's been good for you?
I've had a lot of time to myself, and so I've been afforded a certain amount of time to really think about what I want to do in the future and what interests I want to pursue. For me, it's English and economics, but I also saw it as, especially because of the circumstances and the movements occurring at this time, a good period to really reflect and challenge like notions that I have about race and gender and even unrelated issues, because it's kind of a domino effect.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sasha, what about you? What's been good out of all of this?
I would say all the time I have. I finally can do things that I want to do. Like, I have a lot more time to do art projects, like the project that I'm working on. I've always wanted to have like I've always wanted to find a way to contribute to the cuz to be honest, I've always been involved with the black side of me, I guess, more often. I haven't really, I don't think, contribute to the immigrant side of me because I'm not really in contact with that side of my family a lot. And I love my mom. I love everything she stands up for, but even my mom is a bit more urban. So with this project, I can finally speak to other people or I can finally, I don't know, I guess, find a way to um, connect with that side of me more.
Mhm.
And I've always wanted to do that.
So, Ben, are you back with us yet? Let's see. Well, I'm on the trust our executive producer can let me know when Ben is back with us. Sasha, I'd like to go deeper into our conversation using what you just said as kind of an entryway, an entry point to it. Um, the project that you just described that you've drawn hope from, what happened? What was there a story? Was there a person? Was there something that happened that sparked your passion about that in this time period, made you feel like it was urgent to get started on it now?
My mom. So I'm not sure well, I'm sure you guys have heard about it, but on August 7th of last year, there were raids here in Mississippi, and the immigrant community here was hit really, really hard. So my mom, as an immigrant living here in Mississippi, took it upon herself to work with those communities to help them build each other up. So she's doing a lot of work with them. And I, of course, I was just getting homeschooled that year. So I went with her. I met those families. I spoke to them. I became friends with their kids. And it's just, I was like, wow, I really relate to these kids. I grew up with the same stuff. My mom is an immigrant as well. I realized that I really wanted to be able to give them a way to express themselves because they were experiencing so much pain at that time. And I could tell, like, you know, with people of color, a lot of time when you're experiencing pain, you know, you have to figure out a way to toughen up. So it's really hard for people of color. But I wanted to give them a way because I saw how they were affected firsthand.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. So, Jacob, tell me, was there a moment in this last year, a story that brought the issues of racial injustice or just injustice, period, or lack of equity? Was there a moment that brought that to the forefront for you, made you feel like you needed to be more vocal or you needed to do something about it?
There is a specific event in my mind, but I can't exactly remember names or many of the details about it. But I do remember more about just in recent, I've noticed certain, I guess, microaggressions that maybe I've perpetuated, or perhaps I've seen other people casually remark regarding. Very recently, I guess many people saw, not to make it too political, Kamala Harris's remarks and aphorisms during the debate for the vice presidential to be like condescending or like aggressive. And I kind of think that that really put into perspective how we judge certain people more so, and how people of color and especially women of color are placed under more scrutiny for the way that they act and the way that they speak in general. But I can't really remember like the initial event that really set it off for me.
So how do you feel like we as a collective build our knowledge base? There may be quite a few people who are not aware that there's a long existing stereotype about Black women, and I almost feel like I perpetuate parts of it in repeating it, but that they are angry. There's always the caricature of the Black woman who's rolling her neck or things like that in conversation. To kind of follow up on that, Jacob, what do you feel like you can do? Is there more that you feel you can do or need to do beyond kind of the self-examination?
I feel like once that you get a grasp, or once you seek out information which is out there, but you kind of have to look, and in some ways you can, I don't want to put the burden onto people of color who have to constantly justify themselves every day and like prove and reprove. But if they're open to educating you, I would take that opportunity and I would like cherish it. So upon realizing that, you should probably, after you internalize it, more externalize it and view it, while also keeping in mind that the same experience you had would probably be the same experience someone else would have if you were to like call out or call in someone to talk to them about what they said. If there was something that they said that was problematic and the person that was aimed towards doesn't necessarily want to be the center of attention or want to have to again prove and reprove themselves. So I feel as if that's later a key part of allyship when you realize these things.
Thank you for bringing it up. We are going to talk a little bit more about allyship as this conversation goes on. But Mariah, would you mind sharing with us the moment, if there's an event, if there's a story that has just resonated with you and brought these issues of justice and equity to the surface?
Yes. I feel like there's been so many within the last recent months, given the Black Lives Matter movement, that I couldn't exactly pinpoint just one to detail how it's affected me and so many other individuals like me. But just again, I would just love to bring light to Breonna Taylor and of course George Floyd, and the action that these actions are still occurring, and they've been happening for years and years and years. Like there's always been a specific like group of people that have been negatively affected by the actions of others, and it really has just brought to light again in more recent months just how we are striving for equity and equality, but it seems like we're not exactly at the point that we're open to accepting different races or different people of color and their adverse opinions from our own thoughts. So yeah, just in recent years, I've just tried to like be more vocal about it and just tried to educate myself as to just bring more light to these stories and of course to contribute to these communities as a Black individual myself.
May I ask you, Mariah, to speak a little bit, speak to how the issues you talked about, and Jacob and Sasha, I'll ask you and Ben the same question. How does this feel local? Breonna Taylor did not live in Jackson, Mississippi, or the Tri-County area. George Floyd did not experience the horrible earthly end in Jackson, Mississippi. How does this feel local to you? Mariah.
I believe that such an event has kind of it's affected like different areas locally, at least where I live. But I'm a senior that I'm in the visual arts department at Power APAC, and as of recently, we're actually changing the name of Power APAC, given that it's racial associations. So I believe that the movement really has like just brought to light a lot of circumstances in which maybe we didn't think that this was an instance that was like so centered around race. So again, the Black Lives Matter movement has really like just brought to light a lot more injustices, and I'm happy that people are like being more vocal and speaking up about that information and just willing to go to lengths such as like donating and like helping these organizations. So yes.
Gotcha. Ben, what about you? What was the moment, the story, the experience that kind of brought this home, elevated these issues to you? And in answering that, would you also speak to the where and how it feels local?
Yes. For me, it may just be the collection of all the events, like Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, just back to back, all within this short time span of the pandemic. But more specifically, it was the protest that happened in Jackson in the summer, which is organized by some local youth from Jackson, and attending the protest and just seeing thousands of people with masks on, and like it was just the synergy and unity of the city, and even from out of state. It kind of woke me up to until this is a real issue, and most people think that Mississippi is always in the back burner, but we stood as a model for other cities to protest as well. So that was kind of a local moment and a moment in general that stood out to me.
Mhm. Now, all of you, by this point, you've heard the word justice. Um, I mean, justice, language about justice seems to be everywhere, no matter where you are on the political spectrum or different ideological and philosophical bents. Justice is important to everybody, right? I'd love to hear from y'all what justice means to you. Like, how do you define it, or what does it look like? It may be one of those things where it's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. What does justice look like to y'all, and how do you define it? And I'll anyone who raises their hand is welcome to go. I don't want to put you all on the spot for that.
So I'll start. The definition of justice, I would just say morality. Like, I know different people's morals, they have different standards, but I think most people have a general standpoint of what is right and what is wrong in the legal system, and we all know that the current legal system doesn't follow that guideline.
Other definitions or thoughts on that? Sasha, I see you leaning in on justice.
Yeah, I was trying to see if anybody else was gonna talk first. For me, justice is equity. That's what justice is for me. It's because there's so many ways to define it. It really depends on what you're thinking about. But that's the meaning for me.
Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think my definition of justice would just be a world where we don't have to define ourselves by the color of our skin or maybe by like our economic background or history in regards to our racial past. I would just think that justice is a world where all of that is it doesn't fully matter in the big scheme of things.
Mhm. I think one of the blessings that I think Operation Shoestring is for the community and the people that it serves is that the young people who get to spend time there, whether you're ambassadors, right, or if you're in Project Rise there, is that you feel like you're in a space where people care about you. They value your opinions and you get to express and bounce those ideas off of others. During all of this, the difficulties that we've been experiencing as a country, um, where have you all gone when things did not make sense to you? What's been the are there people, is there a place that you felt like you could go to get answers or be heard?
Wow, I really have the same answer for all these questions, but it's true. My mom, again, because she's always been so involved with these types of things. Like, she really tries to educate herself in every way possible because my mom's actually from New York. So she grew up with a lot of Black people. She knows the she knows what they face because she was with my dad for 18 years too. She's seen my dad get held down by police before. She had to scream, "No, that's my husband! Stop, stop, stop!" Like, my mom has experienced all these things. Like, I go to her for answers, and then not only do I go to her for answers, I go to her for comfort too.
Mhm.
She's really just, I'd have to say, a rock for me, and she's taught me so much.
Cool. So I'm gonna accept as a given that every parent connected to y'all is awesome in some way, right? They may not get to do the work that Sasha's mother's has poured her heart into, but just like as a given, I'm gonna take it off y'all's plate to say that your parents are awesome, your family units are awesome. Beyond them, or even if you want to include them, where are some of the other spaces you all have had? Mariah, uh, Jacob, where have you had to go?
For me, I like taking walks. I find that like just going for a walk, maybe just outside, maybe like a couple blocks down from my house, really just clears my mind and just allows me to get some comfort from like silence. I think like once I'm given like enough space to properly think about something, that everything really just seems more clear and in focus. Whereas like I know pretty like cooped up like a lot of us have been in the last couple of months. It's really good to have like some nice open fresh air just to be able to properly comprehend like the magnitude of how many bad and maybe good things have happened.
Mhm. Jacob, what about you? You spoke earlier about learning some stuff, becoming aware of some things, doing some introspection. Just that basically you didn't have all the answers. None of us have all the answers when we see things that we think are not right or out of place. Do you feel like you've had places to go to get answers when you didn't understand?
So it kind of depends with me. So sometimes when I'm having conversations with friends, and the majority of my friends are people of color and or women, so I'm able to get a broad range of experiences other than my own. And so if any, like there are certain people in the friend groups who do attempt to rationalize with me or answer my questions, but I tend to, when I have more stringent social questions that aren't as personal or on the like micro level or the individual level, I tend to read. So I like recently I've been reading a lot of the works by James Baldwin. Like right now I'm reading No Name in the
Mm,
Street. Um, and I've read Go Tell It on the Mountain, which is probably one of my favorite books. And I've just found the way that they are able to commentate while also revealing in like almost in its entirety the lives of people that don't look like me and have had different experiences and have to really search for their identity more because they are othered by society.
mhm,
And I don't really, with, for example, friends, I don't want them to feel like they have to give me a book about their entire life to
mhm,
read or to know every facet of their life. So I feel as though in that way books can be more informative while also not in some ways bothering your friends or trying to get too into their lives or like just being invasive.
mhm. Ben, what about you? A lot going on, maybe a lot of questions. Do you feel like you've had spaces to turn to get those answers?
Yes, for me, I would say my friend groups, even though we weren't able to meet in person, we were talking group chats about like news stories that hit and just kind of give our spill on into our perspective. And also, like Jacob said, I was listening to a podcast and reading some books. I recently read Stamped from the Beginning, which outlined the history of racism in America and the world. It was a book I always had sitting around. I never had the time to read it. So,
Mhm,
this past couple months was a perfect time to sit down and go through it, and yeah, that was a meaningful outlet for me.
mhm. I it may be a little unfair to put you on the spot, but that's one of my favorite books. Is there something? Is there one kind of one nugget from it, one thing that really stuck with you from that book that you think is worth sharing in this space?
Let me see. Well, one thing the author mentioned was that racism um was literally created by man for economic benefit. So people think that racism is a structure that just like came to be, but he laid out like the steps that were taken to create a caste system, and there were all these diagrams and posters that were sent throughout Western Europe and the New Americas. Um, as the new world was started.
Mhm, mhm. Cool, cool. So, um, I'm really curious about your school spaces, your learning spaces, and I know, Sasha, this may be a little unique for you to answer because you're in a more non-traditional educational setting, right? But the need is still there. You spend a significant amount of your time in school. How well prepared do you feel you were um, to kind of engage in conversation, uh, even with yourself, about all that's been happening in our country related to race and justice? Do you feel like your educations have been preparing you adequately uh, to uh, to lead or to step up and to understand what's been happening there? Jacob, you want to go first there?
In some ways, I feel as though my school has equipped me with some of the knowledge that I need to coexist in an environment with many different people, many different worldviews and experiences. Like, we've had guest speakers that have written about their experiences as being people of color or being women or working as um, those groups of people. And that's been very insightful. But at other times, it's felt as though my school kind of lives in a privilege bubble, if that makes sense, where we seem to only really address issues that occur in the socioeconomic status that pervades in like private schools mostly. And so I feel as though in some ways it doesn't directly connect to like what I would say as it's missing a good amount of voices from other people of color, as well as just other groups that are marginalized groups in general, like trans people or non-binary people. And we just really haven't been equipped too well. And I've had to learn many things about them and these groups of people on my own as a result.
Mariah, what about your experience? You feel like school education has prepared you to confront or deal with a lot of the issues that we are seeing on the forefront right now?
Um, I would probably say my school has done maybe okay-ish in dealing with issues like that. I feel like in terms of like in education, like for instance, learning more about like our history, that there could be a better emphasis on kind of like broadening our scope. Because I know, for instance, like you can't just encompass like so like many years and years and years of history within like just one class, but some different perspectives really I feel like could have prepared me more for kind of what I like had to experience on my own. But what I will say is that me having gone to a public school and having the ability to have like met so many different people from different backgrounds has really kind of like broadened my horizon to like how a person's like past really can have like an impact on them like later on in life. like I've met so many people from so many different communities, like LGBT, different racial communities, different ethnic groups, different religious groups, and it's been so eye-opening of an experience. I have to say, and even with Power Impact 2, just having so many artists under one roof, kind of projecting what they what they want to convey to like an audience, and like just on a piece of paper is like it's really an intriguing process to really like view because there's so many different media, so many different art styles that really go into contributing to the fine arts. And me like hopefully wanting to be like an aspiring artist, I really think in terms of like my school that communication and just like having to meet so many people over the course of my 4 years of like going to school has been like very great. And I would really like, I feel just more of an emphasis on history and just like kind of knowing more information about just really negative past events so that I can just be more educated in the future.
Mhm, mhm. Sasha, talk a little bit about your the your do you feel like you've had access? And I keep thinking about your mom being an ever-present source of insight for you. So I'll ask you a slightly different question. Your school, go certainly
Wait, wait.
address it. What
I
about
actually,
your
yeah,
okay?
I actually do want to talk address that same question now. With
Mhm.
homeschooling, definitely.
Right,
But I did go
right.
to high school for 1 year in ninth grade. Now, I don't know if this applies because I went to school in Ridgeland because I lived in Ridgeland before. But I think public schools have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. When I was in Ridgeland, the school was really diverse, and they did a lot, but it was really only surface work. My sister, it seems like the whole time they wanted to cater to white people. Like, oh, okay, we'll do this, but we have to make sure to remember to cater to the white people as well. My sister made a gosh, it was like a world club, a culture club, something like that. And she had so much difficulty maintaining that club. And it was because of the teacher that she chose to be the, I don't know, the supervisor or something for it. Yeah. Um, that teacher wanted the one white girl in the club to be the president of the club. Even though my sister made it, my sister did all this work for it. And then another thing is the teachers had a lot of I don't know how to describe it. They really, I guess,
They bring a lot
pity.
of biases to the work.
I don't really know how to describe it, but they had like pity for the other Hispanic kids. They would really just they thought they were helping, but they were really disabling them. Like they would let them do all sorts of stuff. It was really just one teacher. I'm not sure, but there was a lot of work that they had to do because the whole time it really only seemed like they were just putting on a veil to make it seem like, oh, we have this diverse setup of students and we're working to make them feel more comfortable here. But it really wasn't like that in the inner workings. I think public schools have a lot of work to do.
How anxious do you all feel? And so I want us to enter a bit of a lightning round. I'm going to try to ask some quick questions and you can give short, sweet answers. If you can, certainly if you need to take more time, do. Um, how good do you feel? How confident are you with the amount of information you have access to about race and justice and the role it plays in our society? Anybody? 10, you feel good. 1, you feel
Okay.
bad. Where are you?
7.
7. Mariah, what about you?
Oh yeah, I'd probably say around the same range, maybe like an 8 or a 9, because of how easy it is for us to access the internet.
Same for you, Jacob? Or how would you score differently? So how can your parents and families, well, this is one of the questions that was put in the chat. How can parents and families better foster your understanding of difference and your school environments where they lack diversity? Like, how can your families complement what you don't get to experience at school? What advice would you give them? How can they help? Anybody?
Talk about it, bring it up, because ultimately the schools, they have to cater to the parents. They have to acknowledge their opinions. That's what they're required to do. So just talk about it, bring it up, acknowledge.
Jacob,
I
anybody else
agree.
have a thought on that?
Parents, I think parents shouldn't be afraid of confrontation or having difficult conversations with their kids, especially recognizing their own flaws or implicit biases they may hold and they might have accidentally instilled on their kids, and they can kind of bring it back and look back on what they taught them and how they can correct any um incorrect teachings.
Excuse me. How many of you, I'm sure your parents aren't watching, how many of you sense fear from your families for you in this context? Fear or deep concern about you or your future?
I think when I was in school, my mom was afraid because when I was in school, she felt like she wasn't involved enough in our lives and that we didn't talk to her enough because she was working all the time. And, as a mother, I think a lot of mothers have that fear that they're not communicating with their children enough, or a lot of parents. But I think just make sure to encourage your kids to talk to you. Make sure to make them feel comfortable to discuss those types of things with you.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mariah, please.
yeah, I agree. I think my mom and dad really have felt very scared, given that they didn't want me to go to school physically because of the current situation. So I think really from the fact that I'm home so much, I really like the fact that they're making more time out of their day, even though I know they're really busy, just to check up on me. Like, I know daily my dad will like knock on my door, and sometimes I'm in class and can't be bothered. But it's really just nice to know that like they're willing to check up on me and willing to like just have a conversation.
Mhm. Jacob, what insights would you have for parents or families in that regard?
I feel as though with all families, but especially kind of with white families, there can be a sort of, just because of how whiteness is functioned in society, the notion that you live in the normal condition, or that you live in like the normal life, and thus you've had to face the normal systems that everyone else has had to face, and thus you kind of deserve to be in the place you're in, which kind of goes back to justice in a way. So I feel as though it's important for parents to keep in mind that this is not true in so many ways, in that we all live different experiences, but we can kind of recognize those experiences as related because of like law and society to factors such as the color of our skin and the people that we love and the way that we talk and act. And so I feel as though parents should be more open to talk with their children, or like to recognize that we have perhaps a differing set of needs because we grew up in a much different environment than they did.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. One of the questions in the chat was about the elections that are happening in about a week. Hey, what we create as adults, at some point we're going to turn it over to y'all. And I certainly hope we don't turn over a mess of any kind to you. How impactful? Of course, I don't want to be overtly political. I think people are entitled to their philosophies and their opinions. But without a doubt, there's been a great deal of attention, and anxiety around this. How are y'all feeling that, and how are you dealing with it? Are you feeling it? Let me just ask you, are you feeling it, and how are you dealing with it?
I feel like just as a person that's unable to vote because I'm underage, I think the best I can really do is just to stay educated and just just basically trying to educate myself more about politics. So basically, I know when the presidential and vice presidential debate were occurring, my mom and dad just kind of made it a thing just to have it on the TVs around the house. So every now and then, I would just like pick up on a conversation point, and just basically, I would just want to know more information or just try and educate myself, just basically about the situation. But all I really can do is just spread the message, just go vote. And yeah, basically just before you make a decision that's probably going to be very impactful for the future, just take the time out of your day just to look up about the candidates and to just go for your preferred candidate again.
What other thoughts do y'all have on that? Sasha, Jacob, Ben, what do you think?
I think it's a
pretty
very
much the same thing.
oh,
Yeah.
shit, sorry.
No, you can go first.
I think it's a very impactful election. I've heard a lot of people say our democracy is at stake. And since Trump has been in place for pretty much my whole high school career and my childhood, I was raised on Obama. So there's been this shift, and I had to wake up to his policies. And it's just an anxious time for everybody. So I think knowledgeable is a best thing.
Mhm. Okay, Sasha. Thanks, Ben.
I was just gonna say, like, of course I'm underage too. I can't vote. Just to encourage everyone around you to vote, because I was actually the one who registered my mom and my older sister. I printed out their sheets. I got them to sit down and I mailed it out for them. I just would say, just encourage the people around you to vote.
Gotcha. Jacob, you want to add anything to that part of this conversation?
Yeah. So, like my friends and I, because we can't do anything beyond attempting to educate the people around us, or we can't vote in it, as many people have said, we kind of watched the debates together, and we kind of like poked fun at the whole thing in a way, because it's kind of just, it's very stressful, and it's kind of like relieving to be able to make light of certain events, even though these events probably will have like drastic consequences on the country and like the way that society sees itself and that the US functions in the global context and in the domestic context. So I feel as if the most influential thing that you could do is probably to inform the people around you if they're open to influence and they want to hear you out. But especially at this time, it's kind of hard to go like canvassing.
Yeah, definitely that. Well, we at Operation Shoestring, especially the conversation about community, always try really, really hard to honor people's time. But I must give you the opportunity. Um, is there a thought? Is there something, a challenge that you want to leave with the audience? You don't represent all young people, but you have very, very ably represented yourselves today. And so I think that any insight you have, any challenge you have will be well received. Is there a thought or something you'd like to leave with the audience today? Anyone?
I'd probably say just make your opinions heard, even if they may be unpopular, and also to just be open to conversation and don't be afraid of a difference of opinion.
Any others? All right. Well, let me just tell you, I know that this is not easy um, to jump on. Questions are coming rapid fire. Thoughts are probably coming rapid fire. You're amazing young people. You have been doing amazing work in the places, in your spheres of influences, in the places that you occupy. That's why you were here. That's why you were invited to be a part of this conversation. I'd like to leave you all before we turn it over to Robert Langford with a quote from one of my heroes. Um, her name is Ella Baker. Some people refer to her as Mother Ella Baker. But I think often about this living in community. Ella Baker said, and I quote, "You didn't see me on television. You didn't see news stories about me. The kind of role that I tried to play was to pick up pieces and put together pieces out of which I hoped organization might come. My theory is strong people don't need strong leaders. You all are absolutely strong people. And by default, you will emerge as leaders very, very often. But please, as you go forth, continue to pour into your peers and do everything you can to make them strong people in the places that they need to be strong. I was honored to be here with you today. I want to thank you for lifting up that parents need to have these conversations. There are no perfect ways to have them. Have the conversations with your youth. Learn from other youth. I want to challenge our educators based on what you all have shared to create spaces that allow you to deepen your understanding. I think the internet is great, but schools are meant for learning. And I don't know if there's any more consequential things for you to learn about than equity and justice because they're so central to our society. And I want to challenge people to continue to support organizations like Operation Shoestring that make space for amazing young people like you all to spend time together, to build together, and to create change together. So thank you all very much. I'm going to turn it back over to our executive director, Robert Langford. You're muted, Robert.
Thank you. My family's been trying to mute me for years, so but that was some self-muting. I do want to thank you, Vaughn, for facilitating an incredibly important conversation. But special and most important thanks to Ben and Mariah and Sasha and Jacob. Thank you for showing up today with your heartfelt insights. It's so incredibly important. And I think the challenge really to the people everywhere in the world today is to make sure that we listen to the voices of young people and that we institute policies and build a world in which young people, all young people, can thrive. That really is the challenge, and it's work that we've been trying to do for more than half a century at Shoestring, and there are a lot of good people in our community trying to do that. But I just listen to the deep thoughts and the passions of the young people who are with us today, and know that all young people are contributing so much and providing wisdom that some of us older folks often don't have because we feel so, I think, compromised sometimes about the other things in our lives. So thank you, Ben and Mariah and Sasha and Jacob, for showing us the way today. Thank you all for being here today. Continue to support us and find out more about us at Operation Shoestring, and have a great rest of your day.